We're talking about PvE today because I finally got the opportunity to play through the Underworld PvE mission with a few friends. And I'll just say it, I thought that they were pretty mid, to be honest. I don't think that they were that bad, but they weren't exactly the greatest things ever either. As far as the actual missions themselves go, the real standout thing about them that I enjoyed was all of the story aspects. The cutscenes were great, but I feel like the story and everything else kind of just suffers from this being the very start of the story. Usually the first parts of games are very slow and not that interesting, and Overwatch 2 Invasion is no different. Overwatch as a team is not really fully together yet, and there's not really anything that deep happening aside from, you know, Null Sector attacking, fight them off. There's nothing with Amaterasu yet. Sir, you know about him, you hear his voice in the second mission, but not really anything else aside from that. There aren't really any stakes or any strong connections between the characters. It's just very early game in terms of storytelling, but that's easily something that could get better as they progress in the story and more events start to take place, because the story cutscenes are very well made and there is a lot of room for telling unique stories within them, and then also having it tie into the gameplay and the story missions themselves later on. Again, it's kind of just Null Sectors attacking, fight them back. But what about later? We saw at the very end of the third story mission, the last cutscene was all about Zenyatta and Ramatra's relationship, and that was really good. It was a very interesting story moment that actually made me want more. And then of course it ends with Zenyatta being confronted by the members of Talon. And it's like, that's a very cool setup for future events, especially if they go further and go away from just generic Null Sector robots. What if we had a mission where we play as Talon and we have to, you know, try and break into the monastery to actually find Zenyatta? I know they did that in the cutscene, but I just mean, what if that was expanded into an actual playable story mission? That would be very cool to actually play as Talon and have the objective be something related to other heroes in the game. There's a lot of interesting things that they could do, but it's just that the first three missions are all just Null Sectors attacking. Stop them. And it's just 3 times. But yeah, the story, very cool, was easily the best part of Overwatch 2 Invasion. The gameplay though, not so much. It's definitely serviceable, and I'm sure on higher difficulties it'll be a lot better, because you'll actually have to play much more safer and there's much more of a risk of actually failing the mission and losing. Since when I had played through with friends, we did it on expert mode, and the only mission we really had trouble with was the second one, because of that whole starting segment where you had to defend the boat from just waves of enemies, and then slicers kept clipping inside of the boat and we couldn't kill them. So that was also a problem. But yeah, the gameplay was fine, the story was great. It's not worth $15, and I feel like the $15 price tag is easily the worst thing about it. I don't know why Blizzard made this design choice of selling it in the shop bundled with Overwatch coins for a jacked up price. It's one of the worst decisions that they could have made, because it gives people the argument of saying, oh, we have to treat this as if it's worth $15 when analyzing it, but in reality it's only $5. They just force you to buy $10 worth of currency with it, and at $5 I'd say it's pretty fair and worth it. And again, they don't need to bundle it with the currency. If people want the currency, they'll buy the currency. It makes absolutely no sense to only sell Overwatch 2 Invasion bundled with the 1,000 coins. Just sell it alone for $5. It'll have better queue times, which makes the overall gameplay experience better, and also people will look at it as being a $5 DLC and not a $15 one. Because 3 missions for $5, I would say that's fair. That's like half the price of a movie ticket. That's fair for 3 missions that'll give you probably 2 or so hours of gameplay, including all of the story cutscenes, since, you know, Those are the main bread and butter of the game mode. And then again, if you wanted to go further and try beating them on Legendary and doing all of the challenges, they're not really challenges, they're just things you do in the levels. There's one for drinking coffee as Sojourn, but you do have to find the coffee, so there's your challenge, I guess. But I'd say the only replayability would come from trying to beat it on the harder difficulties, which could definitely extend your playtime and get you more value for your $5. But I feel like at $5, most people would be fine with just the base 3 missions, just doing it once and being like, yeah, that was a pretty fun experience. It was very cool to see there be an actual story in Overwatch again, and I'm excited to see where it goes next. But no, they had to bundle it with $10 worth of coins, which is just stupid. Talking more specifically about the Underworld co-op mission, it was incredibly underwhelming. I mean, my bar for it was pretty low, but holy fuck, it was not that great. The entire mission just boils down over to you make your way over to the TS-85 calculator robot, then you have to defend him seemingly forever while having to pick up these random batteries, some of which take your abilities away, while you only have a Lucio to rely on for healing. Then after that, you just gotta go over to the end of the map where you have to defend a point again, but this time it's not nearly as long or as bad as protecting the robot and trying to rebuild him. And then after that, you have a kind of unique boss fight, but I mean, it's literally just 2 heroes that are already in the game but controlled by an AI, and they each have like 17 billion hit points, especially on the higher difficulties, which we did it on expert, and that's it. That's the entire mission. You put the keycard in, it's over. That's it. It was so much worse than the story mode missions, and it's a big reason why I think that hero mode would have never worked in Overwatch 2. I mean, that's really it in terms of my thoughts on it. And the story was pretty good, and especially the ending cutscene with Zenyatta and Ramatra, and introducing Zenyatta, and then Talon walks in. Like, I'm excited to see where that leads. So I guess going back into the gameplay, I definitely feel like it suffers a lot from the hero selection that you have. Out of the 3 missions that are available, 2 of them lock you to a set of 4 characters. You could not select any hero aside from those 4. And I feel like, yeah, maybe that's fair for like a first time playthrough, but I definitely feel like they should at least add a, for fun mode or something where when selecting the mission, especially if you've already beaten it once, you can opt in and just have every single hero be available to you, and you can just play through it with whatever heroes you want. That should 100% be an option. Even if it's not something that's like balanced, who cares? Just let people pick different heroes and just be able to play through the missions for fun with, 4 DPS maybe. I guess you could still enforce role lock, but I just mean, 2 of the 3 missions you only have 4 heroes to choose from. Every hero will be selected. And then on top of that, the second mission also has a similar lock where, despite the fact that you have like, I think 7 or 8 different damage heroes available to you, it forces someone to pick Sojourn. Someone has to be playing Sojourn, so just one person doesn't even get an option of what hero they want to play. And then the other 2 missions, it's like no one really has an option anyways, because all of the 4 heroes need to be picked. It's just which of the 4 do you want? So yeah, even if it's just a fun like bonus thing, you don't have to balance it or anything. Just let people click a button. Even if it disables, I feel like I wouldn't be alone in saying that I would want challenges to have some integrity to them and try and, lessen people just being able to cheese their way through them. But I would only apply that to the legendary one. Like, I don't care if people pick like 4 supports and try and get some challenge on a mission where you have to never have someone die, but at least legendary mode, I would have just everybody's on the same playing field with the same selectable heroes. But I would definitely say, just for fun, extra mode, let people pick from any hero in the game. And also, just don't force people on characters. Have at least a couple for each role in future missions. It's really stupid how the first mission in the game, Lucio is the only support available. And again, it's not like you can't have Lucio not do stuff during the mission. There's plenty of characters who they appear in the cutscenes and are important to what happens, and they're completely not playable during the mission. But these are more just smaller gripes with the game mode. They feel fine, and it's a fine way of presenting, you know, the story and actually being able to connect all of this lore together in an interesting way. But I definitely think that there's a lot of improvements that they could make to just make it an even better experience. Now, what about the perk system? Should that be added into the PvE if they're able to have time to finish it? And I'm going to present my take that I'm sure a lot of people will not agree with, which is no, I actually don't want the perk system anywhere near PvE in the future. I want to make a video just talking about it in the future, but especially after playing it and having, you know, a lot of time to think about PvE, I feel like the original vision for Overwatch 2's PvE would never have worked the way that people thought it would. And I don't want perk systems in place for a mission-based story game. I don't want to have to grind out a bunch of generic slop missions so that I can increase Reinhardt's barrier size by 10%. Now, instead of a perk system, I would much rather them if they have, you know, the resources to add something more to PvE. Instead, just have selectable character builds. You don't have to worry about people mixing and matching like perks from 3 different skill trees and how they would interact and make sure that nothing buggy will happen. You just say, we have 2 styles of Reinhardt available, maybe 3 if you want to get fancy, but especially using Reinhardt as an example, they could just be like, oh, here we have the protector build for Reinhardt. You have a bigger barrier, it has more health. Honestly, that might be all they need to do to him. Maybe give him some sort of, you know, supporting passive for his fire strike, like hitting an enemy with fire strike will slow them down. You know, just something so that people can have a slightly different flavor of Reinhardt. I don't think they need to go too hard with these different builds. Just something a little bit unique. Take one unique idea and then expand upon it a little bit, and then try and balance it by nerfing or buffing his other parts of his kit. Because then on the other side of Protector Reinhardt, you could have, you know, Crusader Reinhardt, where his hammer swings are faster, they deal more damage, his charge is better, he's able to use it more often, it's faster, so it's more of a mobility. But like, take away Fire Strike. He doesn't have Fire Strike, but now his hammer is really good and his charge is much better. So now you have these 2 different Reinhardts. You have Protector Reinhardt, and then you have, you know, this heavy brawl-focused Reinhardt that just charges in and starts hammering people all around. And then again, you could go further and you can give Protector Reinhardt, you know, unique Fire Strike stuff. So he's more of the, I play Reigns, protect my team, and hit Fire Strike snipes. And then Brawl Reinhardt is I charge in and hit everything with a hammer. Especially since, you know, they actually did some of this stuff for Winston. Winston, his lightning now chains to enemies when he does the right click. And then whenever he leaps into the air, he builds up damage depending on how much time he spends in the air. Like, I would much rather just have, you know, heroes that you can pick these 2 different builds from than a full perk system that you have to grind out for every single hero just to try and make these builds so that you can do what? Replay a mission that you've already played? Overwatch 2 has a mission-based story structure. There's not going to be any real enemy progression as there would be in a game like Borderlands. Borderlands, they can actually adjust your character because, you know, it's open world, there are side missions, everything takes place in this open world. You can do the main story missions, you can go hunt for, you know, bosses, unique enemies, go hunt for weapons, go loot, etc. And then as you get to later areas in the game, the enemies will be stronger. It will all be balanced and scaled towards your player level, or at least the level that the game intends you to be at that point in time. So progression makes sense in a game like that, but Overwatch 2 was always going to have a mission-based story structure. Progression like that wouldn't really work when you just have normal difficulty on all of these different missions that are completely disconnected from each other. But like, I'll just shut the fuck up and save that for another time. So yeah, PvE is okay, it's not worth $15. See ya.